Hello and welcome to Steel City Business Uncut. The first episode of the month is where we delve a little bit deeper with a really amazing guest in a raw and honest conversation where nothing is off the table, there's nothing off limits, and there's nothing chopped out afterwards and left on the cutting room floor either. Warts and all, this is the full conversation. Quick intro from me, I'm James Marriott. I run Sound Media, where I help brands and businesses to create podcasts of their own as part of their marketing output. And I'm joined by Stephen Kenwright to co-host Steel City Business Uncut, who is Strategy Director at Ride Shotgun. Right, without further ado, let's get on with Steel City Business Uncut. Here we go, another episode of Steel City Business Uncut, or SCBU, as I believe the kids are calling it these days. I'm James Marriott, and what's that coming over the hill? It's Stephen Kenwright. Hey up.
Hello. The Gen Alpha slang's getting a bit out of hand, isn't it?
I was trying to think, how would you put Subu? Nah, it's not. It's not going to work. It's not going to work.
Pronounced Skibbity.
Skibbity. Welcome to Skibbity. Our guest today is Rob Taylor, and I have absolutely no idea how to introduce you, Rob, because you do loads of things. So you do sales training. I love the fact I can make this statement. You do lubrication. You do digital marketing for tradespeople. You run a community for dads who are also in business. There's probably other things in there as well. I think you've got a marketing business in there as well. How would you describe yourself?
Yeah, so, oh my God, you make me sound very confused. Can I just clear up the lubricant? I don't do lubricant. So our sales training is Plan Grow Do, and we focus on the industrial lubricant market. So it's not that kind of lube space. It's a very, very established market where nothing would work if we didn't have lubrication.
Lubrication's very important.
So that's that one covered off. Plan Grow Do is the B2B sales agency. We help people predominantly in that space, but more traditional manufacturing engineering, hence our inception in Sheffield.
Yep.
Around confidence, mindset, process of sales. Yeah, the trades piece is very much from my small business mentality. You know, I was still am a tiny business. Started doing that through redundancy. Wanted to help other people. Fell nicely into the trade space because the trade folks are often small businesses. They're often busy. They get missold incredibly by every different agency or hot topic. You need this. You need this. You need this. So we just took a step back and thought, well, let's try and help the business owners become better business owners, because often they don't realise they're in business. They think they're a good tradesperson, not a business owner. So there's a bit of a shift there. So, yeah, my background is marketing from the events industry at a sort of local and national level. Through redundancy, started working for myself, took all sorts of meanders and journeys through, and just keep going, keep on.
I like that. When you meet someone at a networking thing and you shake hands and they go, what do you do? What's the one-liner to kind of sum all that up?
Well, it's an interesting one around the networking, because I think some people just go networking for networking's sake.
Right.
So when I first started doing that, when I started working for myself 10 years, oh my God, it's a decade, 10 years ago, you've probably fallen into a similar trap. You just go out networking anywhere. There'll be some people there, I'll go meet them and see how we get on. And you do fall into that sort of waffle of, I do a bit of everything for anyone and everyone. Whereas now, especially with the Plan Grow Do work, we're so focused on who we help and who we are. When you go networking, people don't want to hear all this. They could just hear this. So I think for me, it's really important, if you do go networking, to hone it into why you're going in the first place. Don't just turn up. Don't just go to a room because there happens to be some people in it. Yeah, there's a social side to it. I get that. But if you're going with the intention of introducing yourself to people, decide why you're going in the first place. It saved me a heck of a lot of time, because, with kids, business, family and a social life, it can become time-consuming, overwhelming and distracting if you're just going anywhere and everywhere.
You can be a busy fool, can't you?
Yes.
Absolutely, can do, yes. What I'm trying to figure out is, so when this episode gets published, on your little tile where I've got to put like a job title, what am I going to put? Lubrication expert, is that all right?
No, because I'm not a lubrication expert. I'm sales and marketing. Don't you just want to get lubes in my thing? Don't you? Oh, careful how we say that.
That's the clip that I'm going to use as the video highlight when we publish this.
B2B sales and marketing. That's what
B2B sales and marketing. That's better than lubrication expert. Where does it all begin then? Because music promotion kind of forms quite a heavy part of your sort of early days. Was this like, kind of like proper job stuff?
I always, from when I was yay high, no higher than the table, I was always like, I want to work in music. I want to do stuff. It sounds great. But I was talentless with an instrument. Right. I haven't got the patience, the inclination or anything. But when I was young, 9, 10, I'd be like, I want to be Slash from Guns N' Roses. I was looking at him and thinking, you're incredible. Then I realised that I haven't got enough chaos in my life to be like Slash, so I'll try and do other things. And I'll try and create the space, create the event. So I guess that bit's always come naturally to me, to create things that other people are going to enjoy. Right. And if I can take a bit of credit for that thing being there, happy days. That's really good. And I think my first job in events was at Leadmill, just answering phones and sending tickets out to people. Must have been 19 then. 19, so 2 decades ago. Flipping heck.
Wow.
This podcast is aging me. 2 decades ago. I started there, worked my way up through to start working for the Academy Group, Live Nation, and then back into Sheffield, working for another venue independently there, which is when redundancy caught me up. And I had a 2-year-old and a pregnant wife at the time. And that was a bit of a...
Wow.
That was a bit of a kick in the teeth, because we were on holiday at the time as well. We were down in Devon. 2-year-old pregnant wife. I was just settling in to evening in front of television, and I got a text saying, we're selling the business, you're out, in a roundabout way.
God, that's harsh.
Yeah, so I took another whiskey and thought, oh my goodness me, what am I going to do now? And I just thought then, look, I'm sick of, because redundancy is hard. I don't know if any of you have been through redundancy before. Yeah. It's hard, isn't it? Mm-hmm. It makes you feel like your ideas, your talent, your worth is less than. And I think it was that made me think, right, sod this. I'm going to do something myself. I'll figure it out myself. Didn't know what that was. I had a few whiskies going through me at the time, but I was like, I'll figure it. I'm not going to be employed by a person again, and let's see how we go.
I reckon that must be quite a familiar tale, because my journey into like self-employment started with redundancy, and it was something that I'd thought about before. But the weird thing about redundancy, unless it's very organised and you've been discussing for a while with them about the idea of taking redundancy, perhaps bigger businesses that might do that, and it might be like a year or a 2-year consultation. Normally, what happens is it moves from being in your control and kind of thinking, right, I'll carry on doing this for a few years, and then I might take some steps into self-employment. It completely moves it out of being in your control, doesn't it? And suddenly you kind of, for me, I felt thrust into this thing that had been in the back of my mind for a while. In a way, I kind of think, well, that's a good thing, because you just get on with it. Like, procrastinating and kind of going, well, I'll go freelance at some point, but now's not the right time. Yeah. Now's not the right time. Now's not the right time. Tough luck, you're going to do it, and you're going to do it in a month. I reckon it must be quite a familiar story to people. What's your redundancy story?
I have a few. I've only actually been made redundant once from my first agency job. And it was just, you saw it coming, like pretty early on. So it wasn't necessarily an overnight surprise or anything like that. The moment that it happens is pretty much always a surprise, right? But you can kind of see it coming from a little while away. And I was so junior at that point. Like, I'd done probably 10 months in agency land, and I want to stay in agency land. I don't know enough to be a freelancer at that point. I was like, there was no chance of that happening, really. Every time particularly because it was a small agency, every time I was in a meeting, it was for something new. I'm like, I've not seen the same thing twice in that 10 months, really. So it just didn't make any sense for me there. Then when the agency I spent most of my career at, Branded 3, that it was mixed in terms of its tenure at the PLC. It was small. That was probably the big problem that it had. So in comparison to these monster agencies that were doing, tens of millions a year, it was quite small. So it had that feeling again of inevitability, but there was a moment when we had the opportunity to merge it with one of the other agencies, which would postpone a load of redundancies. We'd made a few, and we were told we need to make another 20, but actually we could move it over here in some kind of paper exercise and save a load of jobs. My feeling was they're still going to go, but I would much rather that everyone was able to leave on their own terms and not compete with each other for the same few jobs. At the time, it was a very competitive market. This is quite a bit pre-COVID, etc. So I wasn't directly affected by that, apart from having to do it, actually. So, it's never nice on either side of the table. And then eventually when I went PLC side, brand side, and we got a new CEO at Pendragon PLC pretty much on my first day, actually. My first job was talking about cutting 25% of the marketing team.
Wow.
And the reason that my first foray into self-employment at Rise at 7 came into being was, cutting 25% of the workforce at the same time as me being brand new and completely changing the direction and scope of my role. I'm like, I'm going to be one of these people, right? I was at that point much more senior. And so my decision, as I saw it, was I could go and probably save 3 of these younger people that do want to be here, that are enjoying the job, that are learning a load of stuff, that are kind of doing what, you do early on in your career. So the reason I went and started my own agency was just because I wanted to be in-house, because I had a 4-month pregnant wife and wanted to be in one place. That's one of the tough things about sales, right? You're on the road all the time. And my previous agency career was 3-4 days in hotels every week. So I went brand side because I wanted to at least be in a single office. It's not necessarily less busy, but it is less travel. And I took 6 months to find a job near me that really suited. And I didn't think I had 6 months to find another one. So self-employment it is, and that's kind of how it came about. It just seemed actually the safest and most practical option available at the time.
Yeah, no one takes that choice, do they? Because I've spoken to loads of people before. I'd love to work for myself one day. It's always that one day, and I absolutely get that, because if you're in employment, especially in the state of things today, if you've got a steady income, you don't want to purposely remove that unless you are on sort of sure thing. But
you've got to be in very specific circumstances where you feel like I'm at a point in my life where I can take that risk now. I guess that's quite rare for a lot of people, particularly. I know, obviously, kind of like having and starting a family is something we're going to talk about more later in the episode. But yeah, kind of having the balls to just think, well, let's take that risk now, I think is difficult. It's interesting to talk about making people redundant. So I've had to do that a few times, and I think I found that more difficult than being made redundant, which wasn't much fun. But I just think, well, I'll just find something else. It's all right when you're doing it to people, particularly people who are maybe quite young, and it's really affecting them. Or the worst was a week before Christmas, I had to make a guy redundant who'd walked away from a pretty well-paying legal job to follow his dream of going to work in radio. And he'd got 2 young kids, and his wife was pregnant with twins that were due in about 2 months. And I had to make him redundant. And he got the letter on the Friday saying, you're invited to a meeting to discuss your role. And the meeting was on the Monday. And I didn't sleep that weekend thinking about how can I live with myself knowing I'm about to make someone redundant who is in that situation. And he was fine about it. Couldn't have been any nicer about it. Was amazing. The other one was a couple of young women who were working at a radio station that I was at, who had become really good friends from working together at the radio station, and they were going on holiday together. And this whole redundancy process came out of nowhere really, really quick. The business wasn't in a great situation. And it became apparent that I needed to tell them before they went away that this was going to happen. And so I had to ring them while they were at the airport waiting to get the plane, saying, you've both been put at risk of redundancy, and who's being made redundant will be decided while you're away. So when you land, I'll tell you whether you've got a job or not. And you're like, how to ruin someone's holiday in one phone call. Yeah. That's really hard, making people redundant. I didn't expect this to be where the conversation
shall we try and pick up this?
Yeah. Let's talk about happier stuff. Let's talk about sales. When did you realise sales then was your thing?
Well, I think in a modern business environment, I don't think there's much of a difference between sales and marketing. So my background is marketing. Go on.
No, you carry on and we'll pick that up in a second.
I'm just going to sit back.
Yeah. No, I love this conversation around sales or marketing, because my background is marketing. My business partner at Plangro Do, Steve, he's got a 30-year career in industrial B2B sales. When we started working independently of each other, Steve had just come out of corporate. I was a few years down the line, but wanted an office space, so we started sharing an office. I was sat like here, he was 6 feet over there. And we'd almost find ourselves having the same conversations with different people, but his was from a sales lens, if you like, and mine was from a marketing lens. And this is how Plangro Do came about. It's like, well, we're having the same conversation, or similar conversations about people need to sell more. I'm just doing it from a marketing perspective, and you're doing it from a sales perspective. Why don't we team this together and merge it and see what comes of it? Because what we find is, in its traditional sense, salespeople are often waiting to take orders, rather than realising that buyers' journeys, like a buying decision, is starting online. Buyers are becoming more informed, educated, know what they want before they contact an organisation already. If a salesperson is just sitting waiting to send them the brochure or educate them about a product or service that they already know about, the role of a salesperson is challenged, so they have to become more relevant and engaged earlier in a buyer's journey, which is normally what marketing is. So marketing is usually about brand awareness, brand perspective, brand story. A salesperson's then waiting to inform about product and service. What we think needs to happen is salespeople need to become more active here, so they are educating and informing a potential customer earlier, building trust, so that when their buyer is ready to make a decision, they'll engage that person because they were there earlier. So that's how I think it's changed from what I've seen and what we listen to and research and observe from the spaces we work in. I'd love to know your perspective, because you took a shot. I'm going to take a drink and.
Yeah, there's a convergence for sure, and I think like one of the mistakes that I often see in marketing agencies when I talk to, and obviously my background being probably closer to marketing agencies, one of the mistakes I see speaking to a lot of founders is they're going to go and hire a salesperson because they want a pipeline, like too late. And pipeline comes from marketing, right? And that's true even ironically when you are using cold calling or outbound sales methods. Pipeline still comes from marketing, because it's the ability to get someone to answer the phone to you or answer an email, etc., that makes such a big difference. The role of marketing in a B2B environment is two things, really. It's generate a sales advantage, as in you can close a deal and you have a reason why you should be chosen in that particular environment, and to generate a price premium. Like your business, your product is seen as so meaningfully different that you can actually charge what it's worth. You can
about price or stuff.
Yeah, you can generate a margin on it. And if you don't have that, the absence of marketing, that doesn't prevent you from closing sales. It makes it harder, but it certainly means that you tend to rely on things like cost cutting, like, you know, discounts and that kind of thing, and really throwing away a lot of the power that you've got in that relationship. And there's a direct correlation, I think, between businesses' maturity or, you know, really belief in marketing and how shitty their clients are, how much they deal with horrible people, how much they become the order takers, the vendors, the server responders in that environment. You know, marketing is what gives you the power in that relationship when you are in sales or account management, you know.
And absolutely, they should work better together. You know, we see time and time again, if we're with a sales team of, 20, let's say, you know, in a room, we'll say, bring the marketing team along. And 9 times out of 10, it's one person. So marketing is one person, sales is 20. Sales are saying, generate me more leads. It's like, well, what do you expect them to do? And they'll put so much effort into creating the brochure. I use the brochure as the catch-all generic thing, just the brochure, for the sales team to then wait for phone calls and emails to come in. It's like, well, maybe if you were listening to your marketplace, listening to your customers, what they're telling you when you're in front of them, and feeding that back to what marketing need to hear, Marketing can then help you create that content to help you distribute it to your network. Because you're right, grow me a pipeline. What does that even mean? It's like you're just going to sit here and wait. Build your own. Get active digital, for example. And they're so hesitant to do it. Mm-hmm. We were with an organisation recently where they're measured on phone calls. Do 60 calls a day. How many LinkedIn connections are they going to make? We're not allowed on LinkedIn. Come on. Mm-hmm. We've got to move forwards a bit, haven't we? So this is what I mean about sales and marketing are almost like, they're certainly crossing over.
Yeah.
Whether they're one and the same, yeah, of course there's differences, but I do think they are crossing over, and I think organisations need to be proactive about that and embrace it, really. Marketing is not a bad thing. My background's marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just becoming harder and harder to do one without the other, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I think the environment that you're talking about with those abundance of salespeople and a lack of marketing people, you start to see some of the cracks appearing when it comes to strategy, right? Yeah. Because, you know, there's lots of these areas of a business that do cross over, and marketing and business strategy are a big one there. And that's kind of like this three-legged stool of people that really do need to talk to each other a little bit better, because the real advantage that salespeople have in this whole environment is they're the ones who talk to the customers, and the customers who tell them no are ironically about as valuable as the ones who tell them yes, because they're telling them why they're telling them no. Yes. You know, most customers don't just go fuck off and put the phone down. They say, well, do you know what? No, because I've got this other thing that already does the job that you do. That's good information. Or I'm just not interested in that. It's not a big priority for a business like mine. That's good information. And that needs to firstly make its way through marketing in that kind of front face brochure of, you know, you don't want to try and sell people on something that most people don't seem to want. No. But most importantly, I think one of the big missing pieces generally is that also needs to make its way up through the food chain in a business, whether it's a marketing agency or whether it's a massive B2B manufacturing business, where it's like, do you know what? People don't really want this thing that we have got a big department trying to fulfill all the time. We really need to get ahead of that and start thinking about, you know, returning to that previous conversation. We can avoid all of these redundancies if we listen to the market and start to shift in this direction before the market makes us shift very quickly in that direction. People
know, like the people, professionals know that, but, you know, to take the lubricant market as an example, we see time and time again messages on homepages, you've seen it countless times, I'm sure, for all your lubricant needs, for all your XYZ needs. We've been in business for 35 years. We've been in business 50 years. We're the best. It's like, does someone really care about that? No one wakes up for wanting all lubricant needs solved. I wake up because my downtime's costing me a fortune this month. How do you help me reduce that? We don't talk to problems that customers have. We just show off about our products, and it's a real gap. And I think if leadership, talk about going up the food chain, I think if leadership don't change their mindset to it, we're going to end up just doing more of the same that just doesn't work. We've heard it before, where drive more miles, go and knock on more doors. Why? No one's there. The gatekeepers have gone. They're online. Build a trusted network here. You know, you said earlier you were away 3-4 nights a week. How many times do these organisations say, do you know what? Have a digital day.
Yeah.
Focus some energy on building your network.
Yeah.
Build me some content like this.
Yeah. I think one of the most terrifying phrases I hear from particularly agency leaders is, we're pretty good at closing, we just need more meetings. And that tells me you're not very good at closing.
So how do you respond to that?
It's a question, right? So it's like, okay, so let's firstly, we could do the numbers. We could work backwards and say, okay, from the opportunities that you have, how many do you actually close? But more importantly, what kind of close is it? Is it an easy close? Is it high value? Is it high margin? Is it a commitment that client will make to you? Or is it we've managed to get a foot in the door type of a close? Because there's big differences there. I've been in environments where, you know, you really don't have to try very hard to get a deal through, because it's so obvious that what you do is different to what anyone else does, and specifically just what that person needs. You
probably answered all their problems, all their questions, helped them buy, made it easy for them.
Absolutely. So, you know, you can run the numbers, and it's feasible to be able to get to an answer and just have that mirror to show someone and go, yeah, maybe that isn't the problem. But it is like that kind of, people do think that marketing's there just to generate a pipeline, but it's the sales advantage, it's the price premium, it's the quality of the pipeline. And, especially in the manufacturing space, you don't necessarily need 1 million deals a year.
No.
You probably need a few deals
10 good
that
ones
are
will do.
really high value.
Yeah. We see this with the business owner side of things, especially in the trades, where there's so much focus on the top of the sales funnel. I need more leads, I need more phone calls, I need more inquiries. It's like, well, do you actually have a leads problem, or are you just not qualifying people correctly? Or do you hate selling? Do you hate being in people's homes, asking them to take an order? Because if you've got, 100 leads coming in over 6 months and you're converting 10, you haven't got a leads problem. You've got a conversion or a qualification problem. Let's try and fix that first. Don't just say you need more, because that becomes very expensive, becomes very inefficient. And I think business owners specifically here, not necessarily the teams, but business owners and small businesses could learn from looking at things like that and say, well, do I need more leads? Or do I just need to be a bit more confident and a bit better with my processes to convert what I've already got? Because getting more is easy, but it becomes very expensive, very inefficient, and not really good for business growth if you're not looking after what's below, which I think is what you were saying.
Absolutely, yeah, it is. I think that funnel thinking is a double-edged sword as well, right? Because the funnel is it's everywhere as a concept. Everyone kind of instinctively understands a funnel, but no one necessarily thinks that the funnel is different for every business, and it's entirely dependent on that business's own attributes and circumstances. So it's not just like a ratio of 100 people go in, 75 people go to the next stage, 50 go to the next. Maybe sometimes that happens, but usually, and a big part of brand building and brand management is really just which part of this funnel are we losing people? Is it that people know us and you just would never consider us? Or is it that people actually buy us, but they'll never buy us more than once? Yeah. That's a really common challenge to solve. It's like,
or people might rush it, for example, where you're saying, what's your close rate? Well, our close rate's 80%. I bet you're losing them, or I bet you're winning them just on price. I bet they're saying to you, how cheap can you do it? Because if you're forcing them through with no value, like you say, the ones that are easy to close, yeah, cool, they've seen this, they've done that, they've followed steps. Them that are like, well, we haggled them down and they got us down on price. Like, well, is that really a win? Or have you just done it cheaper? Can you just? It's a horrible question.
Let's talk about a couple of cities then. So you're just back you've been in Dusseldorf for a few days.
Yeah, so we were in Dusseldorf and then we hopped over to Colorado Springs, which was kind of cool. So Dusseldorf was...
That's a big hop.
Yeah, it's more of the step in a hop, step and a jump, yeah. Dusseldorf was the Lubricant and Bearing Expo for Europe. Yeah. So when you talk about networking in the right rooms, that's the kind of right room that we need to get
How
to.
big a market is that?
The European lubricant market is vast. I mean, I can't put dollar figures or pound figures on it, but it's huge. I mean, some of the companies are absolutely enormous. Oh, yeah. Even small independent companies are huge. It's this sort of, it's almost like a secret market that's vast. That, like I said in the introduction, everything uses it, everything needs it. But they're seen almost as like, I don't know, a bit of an enemy at times. Some people see it as the bad industry, but they're doing a lot around sustainability. They're doing a lot around messaging. They're doing a lot about attracting better talent. They're doing a lot about efficiencies, about how they operate as an industry as a whole. And ultimately, if we stopped lubes, greases, the world would literally stop. And I don't think people realise that. So to get these people together in a space that are trying to do good and move things forward, it's good to see, especially as a non-lubricant expert, to see these people who are so passionate about what they do, about innovations in an additive that goes into some lubricant that can make a van 15% more efficient and run for 15% longer, so it saves it going to landfill and saves it being destroyed. There's some good stories around. And I think as an industry, they probably need to tell those stories better because they're happening. They're just happening here. And I think they need to happen a bit wider.
So what kind of people are you helping then in that industry? Because by the sounds of it, it's probably about as B2B as an industry can get.
Yes. Yes, it is. I mean, in terms of business size, we work with some of the largest in different regions of the world. We work with distributors of those companies as well, for some of the biggest companies in the world. We recently started working with a client who's a startup, who is the person who is introducing an additive to oil to make vans more efficient. There's so much happening from top to bottom. It's a very complex market, something that I'm still figuring out and working about who works where and how this goes to this. But that's where Steve, my business partner, is the strength in our partnership. You know, his 30 years working for Shell on a global level. People know him. He knows the intricacies of the market, and I'm the sort of newbie to the space. If I'm still relatively young in that market, and I'm 40. So there's some risks to the industry where they aren't attracting new talent, which they address and they agree on. But they were talking about that over in Colorado when we were there 2 weeks ago at the time of this, where that was the Independent Lubricant Manufacturers Association. I think this was their 77th year, so that just shows you the scale. And people flying from all over America. You know, I'm sure if you've been to America, it's vast. It's like 50 countries, not 50 states, and they fly in, and you know, business happens there. They come to buy, they come to network, they come to meet. But on that, there are panels where they talk about sustainability, they talk about innovations, they talk about electrification, they talk about the things that need to happen for a more sustainable future with some very, very clever people. There was some scientists on the panel, and it was just like, oh my God, what words are you speaking? The scientific skill that those guys have is incredible. And they do it with such passion. You know, they believe in what they're doing, and I think it's a real important thing. I wish they'd be more open in sharing that message.
I was going to say, is it an industry that's got a bit of a PR image issue?
Well, look at the Just Stop Oil, for example.
It's not very sexy.
It's not sexy. It's not sexy. It's almost seen as a bit of the enemy, I think. Yeah, when you look at the Just Stop Oil type people. Yeah. We can't realistically just stop oil. we can't do it. I think as an industry they're trying to get better. Well, they are, from even what I'm seeing. But it's going to take time. Can't just switch.
Yeah, okay. You're a Sheffield lad.
I am.
You support the wrong football team, but I'll let that go. Where do you kind of see the business scene in Sheffield at the moment?
Well, we did a lot of work in Sheffield a few years back. We were fortunate enough during COVID I think we helped 700 people online. We shifted our training online very quickly and reacted to the needs of the region, which was great, really, really good. It gets a bit more frustrating from 2022, I'd say. You know, we have a story to tell as a small business. We've helped upwards of 1,000 people in the region. We're doing a big research project globally for the lubricant space, which then narrows down into engineering and manufacturing. And I just wish the region could be more collaborative in a meaningful way. I mean, I'd be keen to know your experiences around it as well, but I just feel it can become, collaboration is a word, and we'll collaborate on things, but it doesn't really mean anything, because there are pockets of people doing things over there and people over there and people over here, and we keep saying that Sheffield's up and coming, but again, what does that actually mean? Yeah, we're sat in this office and this is fantastic, but I bet it's all been driven privately by itself and not with much support of a city. I'd be keen to know your input.
We have touched on this before, haven't we, in other episodes, and I think naturally when we first moved the podcast to here recording at Ride Shotgun initially, temporarily, it's been quite a long temporary now, you know, naturally conversation turned to this part of town, which is interesting because everything's been kind of pumped into heart of the city. Cambridge Street is the big thing at the moment, isn't it? And so you've got kind of Fargate, there's stuff happening, but it feels like it's been neglected for quite a while. And then, you know, you kind of go into the sort of Castlegate area, which has traditionally been like really rough and still feels really rough, but you've kind of got lots of building work happening and you think, okay, there's something happening there. And then you come across here and you just think, this could be so exciting and could be that, and I've said this before on the podcast. I've said this separately to both of you today, and I'll say it again. You know, I work with a couple of clients at Leeds Dock, which is this Leeds creative district. It's very natural to draw parallels, isn't it, because of the nature of the site, and you just think it could be so exciting. It needs a strategy first of all for those things to start happening, and it doesn't seem to be there, which is a shame. It all feels just a little bit sort of haphazard at the moment in Sheffield, and other cities are further forward in that journey, which is frustrating in some way. And then I echo very much what you say about, you know, collaboration's a brilliant word, but what does it actually mean? Like what can happen? What can Sheffield be good at that other places can't be good at? And how can those cities do something that enables the north to compete more with the south, or the north of England to compete more with other parts of Europe and the world to be specialists in things? That's only going to happen through collaboration, but it needs to be driven from somewhere, doesn't it? So, I feel like there's parts of Sheffield that are better. There's parts of Sheffield that are improving. I think that overall direction still feels a bit muddled.
Yeah. It makes me so grumpy sometimes. I have to be careful not to get too miffed at it. But, you know, I got the bus in today. And I get off on the moor, and I thought, well, the moor used to be not very nice, but now they've tried to do something good. But it's miles away from the tram. So they designed the tram to make town accessible, and they've now put the good shops far away as possible from the tram. Okay, I'll carry on walking. Then you get to Fargate, and you think Fargate used to be the high end. You know, I reminisce, I walk past that, oh my God, I remember here. It's been a building site and a dump for years. And we're always promised it's coming. They put those container things at the top of Fargate, an unmitigated disaster. They put bus gates everywhere so you can't drive. They lock off streets so you can't walk. And then they'll say, come to town. What for? Why should I? If I come to town from the south side of Sheffield, which I do, if I want to go to a show at the Crucible, I can't go down, is it Arundel's Gate?
That's Busgate.
Because of the bus gate. So I then have to go down onto the ring road and add, half a mile to 3/4 of a mile onto my trip? But they'll say, because of carbon saving, we've put a bus gate in. Well, you've just added 1.5 miles round onto my trip. And the ring road as well. You've got me on my high horse now, haven't you? The ring road frustrates the life out of me. It's because surely a ring road, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm open to being wrong, surely the ring road is there to make journeys more efficient. It's to help you get to and from a place quicker by putting a big circle around the city. Now we charge people £12 a pop to get onto it if you haven't got the right emissions, which most of the tradespeople, for example, haven't. They have to then pay £12 to access the ring road every day. So instead, they avoid that by going up the hills, through the lanes, down another hill, backtracks and backwhacks to get to where they need to go. Going through schools, pedestrian zones, clogging things up, using more petrol and fuel, hammering their vehicles, clutches, brakes, so repairs are going to need to be done more and more. For me, it's just the most anti-efficient thing. We're just making Sheffield as a city hard. I don't know. What do you think? I'm going to shut up.
I think the Fargate story is probably a really good example of the limitations within the city, because the moor is now nice because Fargate isn't.
Yes,
because Fargate just moved.
We've swapped them. Yeah.
Which I think suggests that there is a finite amount of opportunity that just moves around the city. And I think you're bang on that one of the best things that the city could do is move itself closer to the train station to make sure that opportunity comes into the city and spread out from there. Because my last agency, we started out in Kelham Island. Kelham Island's very cool. A lot of creative agencies are in there. It's all getting very expensive. It's very hard to get to now. There's never been any parking, but it's now pedestrianised as well. So it's quite hard to actually get there. And because of lockdown, we were always intending to be office-based, at least part of the time. So we hired people within commuting distance. But within commuting distance, is a big phrase that does a lot of heavy lifting, depending on whereabouts in Sheffield you are, because we had a lot of people in Leeds, we had people in York, we had people in Bradford, we had people in Nottingham. And if you're next to the train station, which is where we moved to, that's doable. If you're in Kelham Island, that's an extra 20 minutes, half an hour.
Each way.
And, you're getting off a train, you are then walking, probably in the rain, Sheffield, and it's not really doable. Actually, that commute becomes very, very long. So I think my perception of it is, and I'm not a policy expert or anything of that nature, but I think it seems like Sheffield is the size that it is, and needs to just sort of consolidate itself a little bit better than it does in an area where it makes it more accessible for people. And, that infrastructure, that transport, links, etc. It could be worse. We could be Leeds, because that's much worse. And I've not been to Leeds in 3 years without getting some sort of ticket for going through a bus gate.
Yeah.
And that's because they move. Like I swear, literally, they are mobile.
Like golf holes, they'll move the bus gate to a different area.
Yeah, you sort of dynamically choose bus gates in these. So this is, it could be worse.
This is a conspiracy against you personally.
Yeah.
Like, when you're going, they go, stick a bus gate there.
Yeah.
Give them another fine. Go on. You're single-handedly paying for the regeneration of Leeds.
Yeah. It's long been a thing, though. Even when I was working back in the venues in Sheffield, I could see routing for tours. So the place on the map a tour would be going, and it would go from Newcastle to Leeds to Manchester to Nottingham, and I'd be looking and thinking, hang on, there's almost like an upside down question mark around Sheffield. Why are you missing Sheffield? And even going back almost 2 decades, I remember contacting the national promoters, the big ones, saying, why aren't you coming to Sheffield? We're great. It's a hard sell. It's a tough sell. There's no opportunities to, this was before social even, or digital really took off. Physical advertising is not possible. It's very expensive. You make it difficult. Yeah. We'll go where it's easier, the path of least resistance. And even now, it seems that we try to make things as hard as possible. Yeah, a few years back. Now, I'm not having a go at people are trying their best. I don't doubt that, and I'm sure there's people doing good stuff. But I remember, was it the World Cup where there was 5 Sheffield lads in the team? I remember meeting someone from the council saying, look, Brighton's doing a fan zone, Bristol's doing a fan zone, Norwich, I think, Manchester, Leeds, Newcastle. With 5 lads in the team from Sheffield, we should celebrate this and do Peace Gardens, a fan zone. Get Sheffield FC involved, they're into it, we'll do something. And the response just out of hand was, no, can't do that, the police won't like it. So the police will just manage it, surely, if it's a good idea. They're not there to dictate what we do or don't do. So that's one example of where it's just no, out of hand, no. Then we got to the semi-final, and I think it was Mayor Majid at the time said, now we need to do something. And it was a disaster. It turned into a right mess. Devonshire Green, I don't know if you went, but it was awful.
I don't remember it.
It was horrendous. And even way back when, I mentioned about, again, I met someone at the council about pedestrianising Division Street. I said, wouldn't it be great if we had like a Nottingham-style thing where you can pick up a drink in this bar and in the summer evenings walk, and there's entertainment on the street, and we cobble it and it's nice and flat. Now, where will taxis and deliveries go? I don't know, but wouldn't this be nice if we did it? Let's figure that out. No, I can't do that. COVID comes, and suddenly we found a new taxi route and delivery route because Division Street is now locked off and pedestrianised. So things can happen. It just seems that when a lot of ideas are shared or brought to the fore, it's impossible to collaborate, go back to the point, to make it actually happen in any meaningful way.
Just to come back on one point that you said in there about people missing out Sheffield on tour, Kylie Minogue is coming to Sheffield on her 2025 tour next May. I will be there. Let's move on and talk about Dads in Business. So this is I'm going to call it a group, a community that you run. I'll let you better explain in terms of what that is. This is the point where I have to clarify. I am not a dad. I do not have a family, but you two both do. What I would say is that I'm incredibly in awe of people who manage to raise a family, run a household, and also, hold down a job, I think is an achievement, but running a business or playing some kind of main leadership role within a business kind of blows my mind. Getting myself out of bed every day is an achievement, and I pat myself on the back every day. So how you manage to do that and, kind of keep a young person alive blows my mind. But this is this is for you guys really in terms of, kind of talking about that. I feel there's stuff that's talked about in terms of being a parent and being in business and stuff, and maybe it's naturally a little bit kind of towards mums, maybe more than dads. And I say that with the utmost of respect. So I find what you do really interesting, Rob.
Yeah, so I don't know how many of those things I'm doing successfully, by the way, but we muddle on through. I now have 4 little ones, so it's quite hectic.
Wow.
Yeah, and you're right. I was still employed when I first became a parent, and I had my statutory 2 weeks maternity leave and went back to the office, and it was, how was your holiday? And I didn't realise at the time, I just laughed it off. Yeah, nice one. But you don't realise that your life has actually changed forever. Unrecognisably so. You won't know what you're going to be doing. You need to figure it out and figure it out quick, because you've got your 2 weeks and that's it. And yeah, how was your holiday? I was like, oh, okay, that's funny. Let's carry on. Then after redundancy, you're trying to figure out what's going on, and you are looking after kids and bills and trying to have a relationship and look after yourself. And I just found, I guess in hindsight, found that probably a bit, stressful, overwhelming, because I was getting busy, just going to networking events. It was like, I'm a man, therefore I have to be busy. I am the provider, I'm busy. And busy becomes the measure of success. How busy are you? Very busy. You must be successful then. It's like, well, I don't feel it, because I'm knackered for a start. I'm not seeing my kids. And I was at a session in Sheffield where a friend and colleague of mine on the Dads in Business project, Angakara from Men Up North, a local Sheffield charity, was doing a talk about burnout. And he was ticking off all these things about what burnout is, and I find myself plodding along thinking, sounds a lot like me. Interesting. So I started just becoming more aware of being a new parent, being a busy parent, and trying to balance things, because I don't think you should have to sacrifice or sack off your ambition in a professional sense to be successful at home. And I don't think the opposite of that should be true either. I don't think you should sack off being a good parent to go and focus on work. There has to be a balance somewhere. And I found that no one was really talking about it from a dad's perspective, so I just started writing the odd articles, sticking things on LinkedIn, saying, it's a bit tricky, this, isn't it? It's difficult. How do other people manage it? People were tagging me in. Moms were tagging their dads in, saying, oh, you should talk to this, look at this, he's talking about things now. A mom once did say to me on Facebook, what about moms? And I said, well, I'm not one, so I don't know. I'm a dad. There's spaces for moms, as there should be, but I'm doing one for dads. And I found, I don't know about you, Stephen, but if there was a spot that just said this is a well-being event, as a man and a dad, whatever you would call it, I wouldn't go, because I think I haven't got a problem. There's nothing wrong with me. I don't need to go to a well-being event. What's that wishy-washy stuff? But if I said, look, we're going to get together as a group of dads and talk about what we can do with kids at weekend, that talks to specific people, it gets a specific engagement, and it's something we can actually practically do. And I think it's a big difference in that respect. So yeah, I have a YouTube channel, a website. We've worked with, I think Amazon was our biggest sort of client that we work with in that respect, to create spaces for busy working dads, ultimately. I learn as much as those that attend them. It's not a how-to dad, it's a this is happening, shall we figure it out? I mean, what's your experiences, Stephen? I'd be keen to understand.
I think you're bang on that dads don't think about well-being all that much. And I think that there is a general, most people that I speak to are like, they've got a list of priorities and generally they come last. And that's their, certainly their outward attitude, right? That's the way that they consciously think. Whether they always do it that way, everyone has their own way of doing things, right? But I think generally speaking, they do sort of almost purposefully neglect well-being, their own well-being, because they've got all of these other things to do. My experience, I I am not self-employed because I'm arguably, depending on how you look at it, too good at it, right? I am the person who will not switch off. I cannot force myself. I cannot make myself do anything other than focus on that in my mind. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to do that. I have rules at home that are just my rules, right? So when I'm playing with my little boy, there is no phone. I do not speak to people from work during certain hours, which generally is most of every evening, in fact, and every weekend. And, you know, even when I was self-employed, I tried to set boundaries in terms of shutting the outside world off. But internally is different. And I think that's part of the value that a group like that can add. It's like, it's not just the fact that I don't answer my emails as soon as it's dinner time and bath time and everything. It's more about, and I also don't think about it, and being able to, you know, recognize when you are not present is one of the skills that took me a while to learn. And I needed that hard reset of leaving my business. And I chose Ride Shotgun because of flexibility, because of the opportunity to focus on just bits of the puzzle rather than owning all of the problems all the time. I think everyone's different, but I know a lot of people who say they want to be self-employed because it gives them that flexibility around the home life. I choose not to be self-employed because too much flexibility.
The same is true.
I just top the fuck over.
I mean, boundaries are important. You know, the amount of times you walk into your house and refresh your emails, like, who's going to have emailed you from there to there? It's a great discipline to throw. If I'm playing with a kid, the phone goes away. It's a very important one to have. And I think you touched on something where dads forget themselves. We've found through feedback and sort of conversations we've had that dads are pretty much made up of four things. There's like the work life, there's the money life, there's the relationships, and there's the self. And often it's the self that's first to go, as you mentioned. You know, people will say things like, I remember when, or I used to do that, or I haven't got time to do this, because we don't prioritise it. So therefore that goes, and it puts more stress and burden on the others because we're not looking after ourselves. I don't think any of those are particularly wrong wherever you focus from. If you have like a work lens, I don't think that's particularly a bad thing. You can still be a good parent who has a career path and an ambition at work. And I think it's somewhere where we get really stuck as dads. We're so open to what outside opinion is. You know, I used to hear things like, well, when's Rob going to get a proper job? That was a positive one that I heard once around working for myself. What's he doing that for? When's he going to get a proper job? Rob should be home earlier. Rob should be out later. Rob should be working harder. Rob should be working less. Rob should earn more money. Rob should not do this. The kids should be on tablets. The kids there's so many outside influences. And I think the other ones that matter really are me and my wife. Let's figure out what we think is good, and then what other people say doesn't particularly matter. And I think it's that bit that's lacking in a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's one of the missing pieces, right? Because women have that too, but the outside influences are different. And it's some overlap for sure. Like, I am of an age where my wife is very upset very frequently because parents, grandparents, etc. are like, "You're here. Where's the little one?"
Yeah.
He's with his dad. Oh, he's babysitting, is he?
Oh, I know, yeah.
I'm like, no, he's mine. I'm not just sort
I'll
of
give
like,
him back at 5.
yeah, it's not a minimum wage job or anything. This is part of life. So I think, you know, the pressures come from both sides, but I think it's useful to remember that the pressures are different in each direction, and there's that collaboration, that talking relationship between you and your partner for sure. And there's also the recognition of what's coming in directly to you, and where there's some bias and where there's some loaded opinion that you can shrug off a lot of the time. You should be able to recognise it and shrug it off.
Yeah, because you can charge off and do what you're doing and get busy, but that impacts somewhere else. I think that was one of my realisations when I was out being busy, missing kids' tea time and bedtime 4 or 5 nights a week. I'm thinking that I'm busy, but you're not realising that has an impact over there. Because the missus is then having to do the stuff that you're not around for. And if you're just doing what you're doing and leaving at home what's happening, if that's not agreed on, then it's going to cause friction and frustrations. And I think it's a quick win for people, I think, to overcome.
I mean, obviously, like as I said, this is not necessarily a conversation that I can directly relate to, but I do think what you say about, like, you know, missing tea time, missing bedtime, missing bath time and stuff like that. No one, when they get older and they look back and they go, God, I'm really glad I worked until 7 p.m. every night. Wasn't that a great move? Like, you know, people that do the opposite of that do get back for bath time, that do get back for bedtime, will look back and say, I'm so glad that I played that role and I saw my kid grow up.
But likewise, understanding that there will be work pressures and peak times. I'm sure you have peak times where you think, I'm going to have to work late this week. This next few weeks is stacked. But in a month's time, it'll be quieter. It's that conversation I think lacks. Because we have to be grown-ups and think, well, we have periods, we have peak times and troughs. Peak time is going to be busy. How can we figure it out? Because when it gets quieter, we can do this, this, this and this. But let's work together and figure out how to tackle this. Because then that can, if not, you're going to get pulled from here to here, and having not shared it or spoken about it, you're just going to beat yourself up.
Yeah. Well said. It's balance, isn't it? And I think
exactly
whatever those things are, you know, balancing that equation for you, it's quite a personal thing. There's only yourself that you've got to answer to for it, or, you know, yourself and your family that you've got to answer to for it. So, yeah, we've run out of time, and I feel like we're probably just getting to a point whereby we could be off for like another couple of hours if we allowed ourselves. Rob, thank you. It's been we've been on a bit of a trip there with lots of different things that we talked about. Lubrication, definitely my favourite of the subjects, but I think some really interesting stuff in there. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your thoughts and your journey with us.
Nice one. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks very much for listening to this episode of Steel City Business. It's been really lovely to have you with us. Now, you know how this works. If you've enjoyed it and you want in on future episodes, then just follow us on your podcast app or on YouTube. The show is very active on LinkedIn. Just search for Steel City Business and come and connect with me as well while you're at it. Big thank you to The Curious for helping make this podcast happen. There's loads more about the show at steelcity.business, and you can get in touch by emailing James at steelcity.business. And hey, if you're in business in Sheffield, then, well, why not put yourself forward as a guest for a future episode? And of course, we're always open for a good chat about how audio marketing could work for your brand. Until next time, thanks for listening.